And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Wednesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Good one today. Today's podcast brought to you by nothing else, my beautiful About Golf simulator. We're in the sim today. You know what that means. Going to be getting into some instruction. I've got all kinds of stuff going on here. We're live on Twitter. For the first time, we're live on my Instagram. Welcome everybody in. This might be your first time into the studio here, Travis Fulton Golf Studio, Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, and Stripe Show podcast. Thank you for being here. We've had a great week. Had our best picks yesterday, U.S. Open, of course, with Keith Stewart, who is on campus there at LACC. And then on Monday, Bob Herrick with Sports Illustrated joined us to talk all things golf off the golf course, PGA Tour, live, merge, all kinds of things happening there. We've got you covered as we roll into the U.S. Open week. So many things happening. If you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I've been commenting on a lot of the things that the players are doing, in touch with their coaches. We're going to break it down today, give you our thoughts. So I'm bringing in one of the best in the country, joining me from the great state of Louisiana, Mr. Brian Manzella. How are you, sir?
Great to be on the show, buddy. You do a great job, and it's an honor and a pleasure.
Man, we could talk for hours on end about what's happening off the golf course, right? PGA Tour Live. We're not going to get into that today. Instead, where I love our back and forth and love having you on is to talk about some of the concepts that we're seeing in the instruction world. We know every single year there's kind of the flavor of the month, right? Or the flavor of the year, some things that really take off. We'll get to some of those things, but I want to start with, Brian, some things that we're seeing with the best players in the world. One of them being Viktor Hovland. I've talked a lot about Viktor Hovland on the podcast, the short game changes that he really started to go down originally with Jeff Smith in the changes there, which I thought looked much better. He switched coaches, went to Joseph Mayo. You're starting to see a couple different things evolve with Viktor. I was texting with Joseph over the weekend about some of the changes that I was seeing since he went to them, and he cleared some things up for me. And I want to share that with the audience here today. But Viktor Hovland, Brian, is a starting point. You look at him going to the U.S. Open. We already know he's one of the best ball strikers in the world. Now his short game, at least in my eyes, it doesn't look like it's a weakness anymore.
No, and I mean, I think that proved out in the PGA, right?
Yeah.
That shot he hit in the bunker off the tee and stuck it in the face of the bunker, just like Mr. Young did. That didn't have anything to do with short game. I mean, he might have hit one little sideways shot, but when you're playing a major, around the greens is not like a regular tour event, and there's going to be some funny shots, and he certainly avoided them. And from what I've seen just watching on TV, and then the little basic pitch shot that you sent me yesterday, this is way improved. Those guys deserve credit if they're the ones that are responsible, because what he was doing before was the right word would be 5 handicapper-ish.
Well, let's talk about that, because Viktor is a pure ball striker, and he's kind of a thumper. He leans the shaft forward, folks. I mean, this guy's got flexion in the lead wrist, and he's leaning the shaft forward. A lot of upside in the full swing to that. If you take that method to the short game, and you're going to get the club face riding back like this in short game, then you're going to have a hard time launching the ball high enough at a slow enough speed to develop finesse and enough shots around the green. So usually you're going to start to, manufacture some things, back up with the spine, those types of things. So the first change that Viktor made is you saw the face start to ride a little bit more toe up. And as a result of that, as he would come down, he could start to soften that shaft line. You started to see him hit it more like this and less like this through the impact zone. What was interesting is when he made the change to Joseph Mayo, I think one of the things that got kind of, I think, misinterpreted is that they started to say, well, now he's hitting it more with a square face. He's not hitting it with the faces open. Not the case. Viktor's still hitting it with the face open. What's different is with the face open at address, he still has relatively the same wrist angles, But what you're seeing, and kind of a very interesting approach here, and I was talking to Joe Mayo about this, and I want to get your thoughts, Brian, is as he was going back, you're starting to see the head and the weight kind of go left early.
Yeah.
Right? So he would go back, and then he would go left early with the spine and the head, then the club would fall, and then, of course, he would soften it and turn his chest through. And for whatever reason, Brian, like it just appears that little dynamic has really cleaned up his point of contact, and it's steepened to the attack. It's obviously it kind of steepens the attack angle a little bit, and he can hit it with loads of spin, and his confidence is through the roof.
What you're trying to do at that level, and you know, better players that are watching and listening to this, you've got a club in your hand. What loft club do you have?
This is a 54.
Yeah, so just think about it. You're some 55 degrees, just for the sake of saying. You're trying to launch it like 27. Right. You don't have to do a whole lot of hard math to know something has to take the loft off of it. And what you don't want to do is have your body in a pretty neutral position, like you're hitting a 5-iron up in the air.
Right.
Right? Just narrow your stance and try to de-loft it by just shoving your hands forward. That's what Viktor was doing before. Yeah. He knows how to de-loft it, but he was de-lofting it, getting the angle of attack, and had nothing besides just random elbow bend to take out at the end to put a little friction in the hit, and also to like keep the club from just diving in the ground and sticking there. Right. So now what he's doing, which I do in my own game, much less teach people, is if you can get this going early left, forward, meaning left, and then around early, get that left shoulder going around early, you can more or less put the hula hoop in the ground, and then you have time to take it out with the body, which is reliable. You can straighten your body up through the shot and take some of the plane crashing kind of analogy, into the ground out of there by using your body to come up late.
Right.
If you've done it, if you've de-lofted the club down to that less than 30 thing that you need friction, folks that don't realize that there's some magic friction number that you're pretty much going to have to launch it under 30, or you're going to have some sort of the ball might look like it launches pretty good, but it's going to just go boing over the green. And This week, that would be any major, it's going to be a disaster. So I think what that's doing with the body is if the body's forward, right, then the hands don't have to be as forward to get the same relative to the body to get the same lean. Yep. So he really is not leaning it. He's not shoving his hands as far forward because he's doing it with the body, and then the body's forward and around enough to pull the thing out of the ground. And there's the best of both worlds. You get the descent. You need the angle of attack to be down, and you need the shaft to be shaft hosel lean more accurately to take the loft off. But now you've got body to take the fear of the stub chip shot away. And that's what he's done.
And that softer lead wrist condition.
Oh, right? much, because you don't have to shove the hands forward. Your body's already way over there.
Right. So that softer lead wrist condition can get the club out of the ground too, and also facilitate the face coming around a little bit and squaring, which is all the more that he does. He is hitting his with an open face, folks. He's not hitting these shots with the face very, very square.
I don't even know where that.
Yeah, I don't either. It was interesting. Like when I heard that, I was like, I don't think that's the case. I think he's hitting it with very similar wrist conditions, but I think the face is still as open as he needs it.
He's not trying. What they must be seeing, Travis. Yeah. God bless half the people that talk about this stuff on the air are not golf teachers, right? They're just looking at it, whether they're good players or not. And if he sort of kind of closed it before, right, ish, going back, then he had to look like he was opening it through. Now it doesn't look like he's opening it. It looks like he gets to let it square up. And it is square. It is closing relative to where it is at the top or the end of his backswing. Right. But it didn't square and impact, probably hardly ever.
So no, right. So let's bring this full circle for a minute. We see a lot of players, Brian, that they will rotate the face open going back in the full swing, and then they'll come down and they'll lose the angle as a squaring mechanism at the bottom, and launch the ball extremely high. They'll hit it pretty straight usually, but they'll launch the ball extremely high. They're taking a 7-iron and turning it into an 8-iron or a 9-iron. So that kind of dynamic at the bottom, a little more extension in the wrist, the club head passing and getting out of the ground is very good for short game. But in the full swing, for all intents and purposes here, we got to have some shaft length, right? You want these things to come in and line up a little bit like this. Now, Viktor will have a little bit more and really compress the ball, really de-loft at all of those things. So I think it is a good starting point. And I love the conversation I had with Joe, and just in that little lean left, getting things a little more out in front, right? Now that club head can come in, and to your point, he's out in front. Now that point of, that attack angle is steepening, and then it's getting out of the ground and still launching it at that angle, getting the friction, getting the spin. And it just seems like it's really come full circle for him now in the aspect that he slowed the ball speed down, but he's got enough spin and enough confidence in the point of entry that he knows what the ball is going to do. So it's really cool to see it come full circle. All right, let's move on, because I know you want to comment on this one. Allow me to put on a swing device.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to get people to kind of visualize what we're talking about, Michael Jacobs with Patrick Carrington, right? 7 inches, his body, his center of mass is 7 inches further forward with the driver than it was. Mm-hmm. Probably dynamic loft about the same. How can you do that? You don't have to shove your hands up there to do it. That's the same thing, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Smart ball. Our friend Martin Chuck.
So I'm seeing, So our buddy Martin Chuck designed this, the smart ball, and you see this from time to time. I saw it yesterday on the range with Rory McIlroy. I'm seeing a lot of swing devices on Rory McIlroy as of late. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing the Pro Sender, which is a new one from David Woods and Sean Foley. It's a good tool as well. You put on your right wrist.
It looks pretty much like a Hogan Secret without strapping the finger, right? In that kind of
it's not forcing you into extension.
Yeah, it's there so you can feel it, right? I get it. I get it.
So let's talk about this for a second, because I saw a tweet on Twitter, and he was saying that he was talking to Rory as he was hitting with the smart ball, and that he was trying to get his lead arm more around him. And I'm like,
God bless him.
I'm like, no. I don't think Rory's trying to get the lead arm more around him. I think, I hope.
Some of the swings look that way. In fairness to whoever told you that, Travis, some of the swings that I've seen look flat as hell.
So I think Rory's trying to get the lead arm more upright. Now, when I have the smart ball, I don't have this completely lengthened out, but I don't want to finagle with it here going live. So I've got it in my elbows here, and I'm kind of pinching it together. So I get the feeling, Brian, when I do this, that my elbows are a little closer together. The triangle's kind of moving with my turn, but when I really feel it is up here. I feel like, I can't retract away this way so much, and I can't, I could get it around me, keeping it pinched, but I really feel like when I get my hands more up and pinched, that's where I feel more secure right there. Is getting my right elbow.
The issue is, though, that pretty much everybody worth a darn's elbows separate at the top. Almost everybody.
Yeah, right. Don't get a little bit here.
Up in gears right here on this computer right here on my right, and I guarantee you, I can. You can take 2 markers, create a distance, and then watch. He turns his chest really early. Well, that's one of his tenets of his swing. But when he gets to the top of the swing, his right arm looks more like this. This fascination, and I think we've gone back and forth with this, not really discussing it, but talking about the show, that everybody has with either taking any remnants or semblance of club getting on the cross the line side of the hands, which, for crying out loud, the last 2 major winners do it. So what does everybody think it's the answer to get the club laid off? The last thing in the world Rory needs to do with his fast transition is already have his rotators negative, so that now when he transitions, they go more negative. It doesn't even make any sense. I understand why he's doing it, because he feels like, and this is the prevailing instruction of the day, that if you cross the line, it'll dump behind you. Well, if that was the case, then those two guys couldn't have won the last two majors.
Yep.
So I think he's dancing around with something that doesn't even work for him, because he's a drawer that every time he's messed around with trying to take the draw out, like that failed experiment with Cowan that nobody talks about anymore. They tried to take the whole draw out, right? He goes to Kiwa and he says, boy, it was a lot easier to play this course before. I just aimed over the ocean. I knew it was coming back. Now I don't know where it's going, right? So when you're a right to left player, like out of the crib, like he was, and you take that away, it's sort of a dangerous deal. He's not very good with his short irons because he doesn't add enough forward rotation of the arms early in the downswing, not because of the top of the backswing position. In my opinion, he's swimming when it comes to that. And the fact that everybody thinks that pinched elbows on the under right arm and laid off is the answer to everything. They're all trying to do it. Horschel's laying the club off way more now than the capture I have of gears in him right here that I've looked at maybe more than anybody else's swing.
Yeah.
It's not the answer to everything. It might be the answer if you're a guy who fades the ball, who wants to fade it easier, or you're a guy who accidentally always played better that way, and now you're standing the club up. I had a student that plays on a tour that I had to do that with last week. If you're used to the club being laid off at least very late in the backswing and it starts getting across the line, you get dicey. But I don't think Rory, realizing that maybe what you're saying about the person saying his arm was getting deeper might just be him guessing. Yeah. If he gets his hands and arms deeper, the club is going to want to cross more. So it's like you can't do both. You can't go.
I don't think he's trying to get his hands deeper. I think
I don't think so either. I don't think that's going to work.
I think he's trying to get his arms up, his left arm more upright like this.
That would be that would help him a little with the wedges to me.
Yeah, I think that's what he's trying to do, and I think with this.
But you saw where he was dropping the ball at, right?
Yeah. I don't.
First move down.
So it was interesting to me. It was interesting to me that he was using this, because I don't know if this is exactly what I would do. In trying to get the left arm more upright is use that. To me, when I'm doing that, I feel like I need to turn and let things kind of work around more personally when I do that, when I use that. So, he's definitely he's trying to get it up here. The one thing we know with Rory is on the way down, his hand path goes this way, straight down. Right. So when he does get it kind of in and around him pretty deep, he can get it trapped pretty good.
I agree. I think a lot of people out there have celebrated. If you sell in flat backswings, not going to mention any names, they love Rory's current flat backswing swing, but the guy's not winning any majors for a long time. So I think whatever he's doing, right, he's good enough. He can win anytime, including this week. But I'm not digging it. I wish his arm was a little bit more up.
I agree. I like the idea, and I've said this. I was talking on the radio with the Paulson guys about this, and what would you do? And I think Rory getting his arm a little more up. And then that club kind of, the arms and the hands a little more out in front of him. I think he could kind of do more with it. I still think he could hit his draw from there, no problem. And if he wanted to fade it, he certainly could do that. And I think it would be a little more of a conducive fade from here rather than maybe trying to do it so much from around here. So I love what he's doing here. Then he's got that pro sender on, which allows to go to extension. And I think as he's up here, he's just trying to let that club fall a little bit. I think he's trying to be a little less vertical and a little less deep. And I think. Do
you think the club is vertical because he's not extending his right wrist? No chance. I honestly think his arm is rotating this way at the top of the swing his entire career. Yeah. I understand that if he tries to add the extension at a different part of his swing, if he's in the 3/4 to the backswing top, like this, he's not quite at the top, and he then tries to add extension then, well, obviously it's going to flop behind him a little bit more, at least on video. I don't see that idea working a lick under pressure. He'll go back to reverting. I think the answer for Rory is to not get the club too deep or his hands too deep too soon, and to keep the club head on the laid off side as long as he can. And then when it sneaks over late. That would be what I would do with his backswing. I don't see him trying to do anything that even looks like that.
Yeah, I think he's closer to that than you think. I really do. But it was just fascinating as I'm watching Golf Channel right now, and he's hitting his driver right now. It's interesting to tune on and like, there's Rory McIlroy. He's got the smart ball hitting shots. And then 2 days later, he's got the pro sender hitting shots. Like, oh my gosh! Like,
he'll have them both on. You know,
he's gonna have pool noodles hanging out of his belt buckle. And my goodness. Anyway, all right, let's move on. So you talked about this flat backswing. So Justin Rose, I think, is someone who
it's getting flatter, isn't it?
You're seeing right now with the lead arm pretty deep and the shaft matching up to that left arm. Everything's pretty deep and around him like this. And from there, he's able to turn and hit it. What's interesting with Justin is that forever you've seen this rehearsal where he kind of lowers the arms.
Yeah, sure.
And then gets the face a little toe down to here. So he's trying to get his arms down. The club head's a little behind him. The face is not open. And then, of course, he just kind of from there just turns and hits it. Now it looks like Justin is a little deeper, the shaft matched up to that, and there's no more of that. In fact, it's really just leave it alone and turn and hit it. So this lead arm depth, shaft matching up, we've seen that it worked really well for Max Homa. And Justin,
but he's a fader. By the way, I saw a driver swing of his posted yesterday, the best driver swing I've ever seen him make. It was less fadey. What people are missing in all of this backswing stuff is the club is going to get high at some point, right? And from the view that we have right here, my club's out of the screen. Let me get a regular length club that you can see. So it's out of the screen. But if I go to the top of my backswing, it's in the screen now, right? You see it now.
Yep.
So that means the club, once it gets to its high point, has a down track, right? The best players over history, it basically will come down toward their neck. So the golfer is slowing that club down because they have to, right? It has speed. They're slowing it down and they're redirecting it in the downswing. You start taking out. You start going, I'm going to go deep and I'm going to go rotated. Look where this club head's going now. The down track of the club head's going back behind their right shoulder. You're going to see steepening from there on the golf course. They just don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're playing with something that they haven't thought out very much. It looks like it's easier, right? Because the club is already there.
Yeah.
But when that late backswing, that's all posing and driving range garbage. But when you get in a tournament and the best players have faster backswings than the people we teach on a day-to-day basis, that club head's coming down toward their neck. It's easy to redirect it a little bit shallower than that coming out because you're starting to turn.
Right.
But if it's already back there, and everybody's rotators are positive in transition because that's just what you have to do to play golf, then you're not going to be able to stay. The whole idea of getting it there and staying there depends a lot on how much that club comes back toward him at the top of the swing. Yeah. And if Justin Rose overdoes it, he's going to steepen it in the downswing. He's going to have the exact opposite.
It's a fine line.
Scenario.
It's a fine line. I've seen that a lot, even with students in here, where they get up there and you start teeter-totting on that, slightly laid off, and when you get that club kind of hanging over there, it's really easy. Then when that club comes down, to your point, you start seeing this, right, where it wants to get a little tippy and heavy. in transition.
Well, because you've already maxed out
That's right.
You've done this as far as you can do it, and it's hard to hold it, so it starts flopping over soon.
That's right. So the point here is that as you start working that left arm around a little deeper, is that you like that club head showing up over there is just fine at the end. I mean, that's perfectly okay.
Because what you did right there was coming towards your neck, and then from there you've got a chance to do something with it in transition.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I'll never forget. You probably remember this when Sports Illustrated was still great guns. The famous picture of Tiger on the 18th hole at Augusta, at the top of the backswing, and the title was Masterpiece, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the Tiger Slam or whatever it was, but it must have been. And everybody went, look at this. What do you see here? It was like somebody posted it. What do you see here? And I went, I see a backswing position that teachers are already making apologies for. In other words, you think everybody would have copied that, but somehow they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not copy the Tiger 2000 swing, and Tiger didn't even copy it. So it disappeared right away. Just like I said before, you got two guys who are arguably the two hottest guys in golf, especially if Scheffler makes some putts. We might talk about that a little bit, right? Yep. But Scheffler, the last two major winners, right? Unless I've got this wrong, isn't it Scheffler and Hovland? They're both a little across at the top. Why is everybody working on laying it off if the last two major winners, basically because they ball struck the,
Yeah. No, I get you. I'm with you. Getting that shot.
I understand that he didn't win the major. He won the last tournament. Right. Hovland, right? Yeah.
John Rahm won the John Rahm won the Masters. Yeah, John Rahm won the Masters, who's definitely a little bit that way. Right?
But short, where would that club point if he made a full backswing? Right. That's the point I'm making.
I actually made that post. I said, if Rahm made a full backswing, I bet you that club would be parallel or a little across the line. And I got like drilled for it. Like people are like, why would he make a full backswing? He can't. I know he can't.
You remember the DVD set that came out of Hogan? It was like one of the last things in the DVD era. It was like a 5 video. Anyway, they had a picture of him in 1953. Hogan at the top of the backswing looked like a normal full backswing, not one of these little short little Hogan Shell Wonderful World of Golf 6-irons from 140. And his club was all the way back there and slightly across on the other side of his hands.
I think what's interesting about the height or the depth of the lead arm, I think preferably, and we know the Hall of Fame's filled with a lot of different unique swings. And I think preferably for me, like, I would rather have a left arm that has a little height to it. It's got to have some depth, but I'd rather have it up a little bit. I certainly don't want it in and wrapped around me super deep like Matt Kuchar. Now, you can certainly play golf in there and I know have success, but, a little more upright left arm, sign me up, JT, sign me up, Scottie Scheffler. I think Rory's trying to get a little bit more there. But the reality is that sometimes, trying to be up there can be a physical limitation too. Like Max Homa was a good example. And I talked to Mark Blackburn about this in the podcast, is that he had a hard time turning, staying in the spine angle and having that lead arm as high as he was trying to get it. And they just had to, let the lead arm work a little bit more around him. And that was a little more conducive to his body, to his physicality. Yeah.
But he's making a super rotated left arm swing that if you go flat and rotated, now you got issues, right? So I think what you're looking at, like the swing that was posted yesterday of him with a driver, nobody would call that flat. So I understand maybe they had to lower it a little bit, but
no. I'm not saying like it's not like this.
Yeah, it's not this. Flat. Yeah, slight. The driver swing went right. The club head went right on his hands.
Right here. Yeah. Yep. And that's where Jay Rose is too. That's where Rose is too. I think Rose is feeling a little more of that, and I think the reality is he's there. I don't see Rose over there. You know who I do see over there? Sahith Theegala.
Yes. And the kid from the Gordon Sargent.
And Gordon Sargent. Yeah, good point. Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I just, man, for the people watching, right? I mean,
if you're going to turn it explanation to those two guys. If you're going to turn through it as much and as hard as those two cats you just brought up, then you can do that because you're turning through it a bunch, and the club being laid off is just another way of saying the arms in the club are more open, and they need it or they would swing miles out to the right. They need something if you're rotating like that and you're swinging inside out, you're not going to be able to play on any tour.
Yeah. All right, let's finish with this. Let's talk about Scottie Scheffler, let's talk about his putting.
Yeah.
And
I looked at it in depth this morning. I was shocked.
So you looked okay, good. So you looked at Scheffler's putting in depth. I was texting with some people on site in the booth, some people that are pretty close to what's going on there, and they felt like that Scheffler in his putting, which has been atrocious the last two tournaments. As absolutely, and this is not overstated, folks. Brilliant, genius his tee to green game has been.
100%.
My God, it's been unbelievable. So tee to green, it's Scheffler, and then it's the next tier. It's not, and there's a gap.
Yeah.
But his putting has been awful. He lost 8.5 his last time out. He lost 4.5 the time out before that. And the people that I were texting with, they were saying that the ball was coming out of the heel maybe a little bit. Like he was getting some heel strikes. And with the heel strike, of course, when the ball roams around in the face, then you've got line and distance control issues. So rumor has it, I felt like, and the people I've been talking to, that we're going to see something different this week. And it sounds like there's a couple things at address, but also a new putter that we might see.
Yeah, I saw the putter. Yeah.
Might be a new putter. You saw you were looking at the putting stroke. What'd you see?
So, I've never really looked at it hard. I watched him win the Masters and all these other tournaments he won, and it looks like a normal putt, naked eye. But now I've got it in the computer, and I'm starting to find the center of rotation. So basically what the guy does, which, he's a big old tall guy, he sort of shoves his hands back on the backswing.
Yeah.
And then instead of one of the best putters I ever saw was Greg Lesher, who played the tour a little bit, played for LSU when David Toms was there, and I was working with all those guys then. He would shove his hands back and then shove his hands forward, kind of like Tiger putted when he won his first, junior AMs and all that kind of stuff.
Like this, actually.
Yeah. But what Scheffler did, at least this is the video I saw, and I saw a couple weird angles that looked like it was similar, is his hands moved back a decent amount relative to the club head on the backswing, and then he kind of lifts it going through. And I was like, wow, I wonder where that club's rotating around. Outside his left elbow, just for reference, Nicklaus is rotating around his chest, and Cam Smith is rotating a little bit lower than that and to the right. So you got Cam Smith's rotation point of the club here, Nicklaus here. Scottie Scheffler is shoving his hands forward, which would be one thing if he didn't also toss the heck out of it and then sort of like extra rise angle through the ball. And I know somebody watching this or listening to this right now says, oh, yeah, but he won the Masters. Obviously, he putts good. Yeah, because he's talented as all get out with his hands. But when you lose some confidence, and maybe he doesn't even know he does all of that, to me, it'd be easy. Just set it a little bit more in the backswing and just let him go down the road. But if he keeps making that backswing he's making, he needs to find something else going through to keep that thing from rotating around. Because when you get it way, way forward and you get a little putt, you don't have time to have to basically go shove throw on a short putt. Does that make sense? In other words, Mickelson, as good a putter as Mickelson was in his prime, he was horrible on short putts because he forward pressed it. And Jordan Spieth's a little bit like this because he's got the cross-handed forward press. Yeah. And on longer putts where they can toss it out, they line the club up good. But when they get like 3 or 4 feet, all that forward lean that Mickelson had, and obviously he's lefty, and all the forward lean that Spieth has. It's hard to get it out on a 3-foot putt on major championship speed. So I hope, Randy Smith's a good teacher and great teacher, and I'm sure he's got good people watching him, but I would have him he's either got to set more going back or shove more going through. Definitely not what he's doing that I saw on video is going to work if he's putting bad. Putting good, putt with your foot. But it was less than stellar mechanically when I looked at it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. It really is, like, how you can be so brilliant from tee to green, and then with the putter, like, you are the worst putter on the other end. Like, you don't see those extremes a whole lot. He clearly lost his confidence. I feel like he's got to do something a little different. I was reading some of his comments that he doesn't like to change and this, and I think there is a place for that and being patient and letting things play out. But it feels like it hit the bottom, and he needed to address something. And oftentimes, Brian, that when you make a change in putting, we've seen, like when Morikawa changes putting, when Luke List, I remember when he changed his putting, like the first week, 2 weeks, and we all been through this. It's like, oh my God, you make one and it's like a whole new chapter in your brain, and you just free up, and all of a sudden you start making things, and sometimes that wears off. Well, it usually does to some degree. So I'm just really curious with Scottie through the changes if we see a little hot streak here, because make no mistake, if the guy makes putts, he wins by 6 this week, 7 this week. That's not an overstatement.
So he's hitting it stellar. And what winds up happening, and I saw this happen to Johnny Miller, who was my idol, and I know they just gave him the big award last night. When his putting went really bad, it starts affecting your full swing, because now you go, well, I got to hit it 2 feet from 190 here. 6 feet, I'm going to miss. I mean, and you're playing with Tom Watson in his prime, and he's rolling in 30-footers. I saw it live where, like, he just was like, this is ridiculous. I can't deal with this. Now, I don't think Scheffler's to that point, but it wouldn't take a couple more bad majors where he felt like he hit it. I mean, he should have won the last one. So.
All right, good stuff. Really, really good stuff. Really appreciate your time, Brian. Enjoy the U.S. Open. I usually have, for those, I usually have videos that we put up, and we can look at these guys' swing as well. But for whatever reason, my software is not. It's not liking it today. The technology is winning out. But this was perfect. Got to talk through it, demonstrate it a little bit. Enjoy the U.S. Open. Everybody will be back next week. Stripe Show Pod.